Okay, fantastic. We are ready. So let's talk about something in Saas. And based on many feedbacks, I have redesigned a little bit the slide deck to help us understand what is Saas POC and what you do to make the Saas POC happen, right? So if the customer would like to experience Saas in general, they have to perform several technical steps, right? They need to add a component into their network in case they want to use Optic, and they need to perform some networking things and some security things, and basically they can operate the product in Saas, and then also they must contact support. All of those things start to be a part of the Saas POC, which normally would not be a part of normal customer operation. I mean, at what point customer really cares about support? When something gets broken. For Saas, it's very different. Support plays a very central role for everything here. So we will discuss every one of those topics in particular, just to understand what's going on, right? So how Saas works in general. You have a customer environment, and this environment, customer environment, is the one that you built in the past 2 days. I will be referring to it from now, a customer environment. Okay, and the customer environment has micro-focus products. It monitors things, basically encapsulated thing for its own, right? It has people that are operating the products, and they have all kinds of experts that do maintenance and everything else, right? Now, somewhere out there in the world, there is a SaaS that belongs to Micro Focus, right? Sorry, somewhere out there in the world, there is a Micro Focus entity, and there is a relationship between them, right? So, for example, if the admins or PS need some support, they would go to support Micro Focus. There is the sales and pre-sales, professional services. All of those things are normal on-prem relationship, like we are used to, right? So customer environment, and sometimes they go for Micro Focus when they need to buy something, renew license, or get support. They are pretty much self-reliant, some of them. Now, for SaaS, it's going to be a little bit different for Opsb SaaS specifically, right? We're not talking about APM at the moment. So the customer will still have their own environment, and there is some Micro Focus support on the side. But there is also a Micro Focus SaaS that stands apart from the normal on-prem Micro Focus process. SaaS is an organization inside Micro Focus. Sometime at some point it was a separate organization. Now it is split between product groups. But nevertheless, from procedural perspective, they are like a separate entity, which we need to always keep in mind, right? And they have support of their own. They have products that are installed for the benefit of the customer. They are the ones that manage it, and they are the ones that perform configurations and maintenance, right? So all of those professional services folks, or people that create packages, custom monitoring, and many things that are done on customer side. For SaaS, they are going to be belonging to SaaS itself, not necessarily to the customer or as a third party. Okay, so we have a standard product lifecycle between the customer environment and normal Micro Focus. But for SaaS, like what are we doing here? Well, why do we have two? What do we do about it, right? So in the SaaS, we'll discuss how the internal team structure works. And also, basically, the SaaS is exposed to everybody based on support. And they have the front end, they have the product operation team, they have the infrastructure team. And also they have people that do all the configurations, customizations, and upgrades, which would be the product team, but on a different tier. And there's also the customer account manager. Many people that are participating in all of that, and you need to be taken into account their existence. We will discuss them in particular a little bit later, but you need to understand that in SaaS, there are many personas that sit behind the keyboard and screen and mouse and do stuff for you. And while you interact with them frontally on just one level, it's not going to be the same person. It's not like support that has multiple tiers, like the simple, the complex. In SaaS, they actually have role redistribution. Okay, so how do we navigate this landscape? First of all, the POC setup. Okay, you are going to SaaS for the very first time as a pre-sale, and you would like to set up a SaaS POC to begin this specific process. So it's a little bit simpler, right? You'll contact the support and ask for POC. Now, there might be a representative that I'm not aware of. Maybe the practice leads can shed some light of it. Maybe someone in SaaS, instead of getting a ticket, they would ask you to contact them first and then open a ticket. Okay, then you would wait for SaaS to do their magic. They would create an environment using pretty much the processes that we done in the past 2 days, right? The environments in SaaS for the Opsb and SaaS POCs, or just Opsb and SaaS, they're AWS based, so they do cloud toolkit stuff. And then you will do some detail exchange for the integrations. And then you would work on customizations. This is like a 4-part process from a very, very high level. Okay, again, we're just recapping. We'll go really deep into this a little bit later, right? But what is the standard version? This is the POC setup. The POC setup, let's recap again. You ask for POC, you get the environment created, you do the integrations, and then you customize it. But SaaS is an ongoing process, okay? And what happens once you get your environment, how it looks like? So normally when you have a product or a need, be it in-house or SaaS, if you have a SaaS environment somewhere out there, the process is this. If you're unable to handle an issue by yourself, you ask yourself, is it related to SaaS? And then if you say it is a SaaS issue, then you need to decide, is it an incident? Is something broken? Or is it a service, or is it an on-prem issue, right? If it's an incident or a request, you would open a SaaS use case support. I will show you the support system in a second. And of course, the SaaS would be handling the issue for you, right? If this is not related to SaaS, you would go to Micro Focus support, like the way that you are familiar with right now, right? And support would say, well, is it SaaS after all? You know, it might be something related to UCMDB, and you would see that your CIs are not getting exchanged properly. And you would say, well, you know, maybe the problem is with my UCMDB locally. And you contact support and they say, oh no, they might evaluate the issue and they say, you know what, this might be related to your stuff really. So in that case, they would handle your support case and close it. But if they evaluate the issue and they say, you know what, this issue is related to SaaS, or the SaaS folks would evaluate the issue and say, you know what, you contacted the wrong person. It should be an on-prem support. Under the current promises, if you go to the wrong place, the wrong place would open a ticket on your behalf in the right place, right? So you go for Micro Focus support, they say, oh, it's a SaaS issue, they should go to SaaS and open a case for you. If you go to SaaS by mistake and they say, well, this is an on-premise issue, the SaaS support should open a ticket for you in the normal system, meaning that the customer should not suffer and try to navigate all of the complexities of Opsb in SaaS, of various support types and what to do. They should not be an expert on the Micro Focus team structure. They basically do their best in trying to understand, is it a SaaS related thing or not? And they go to a target system, be it the SaaS system or the customers, the normal support system that we are all familiar with. And in case they made the wrong decision, it's not up for the customer to go and fix it, in theory, right? So this is how we operate. Okay, now I want to show you a support system for SaaS. So I already typed in the URL. I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but basically it's saas.microfocus.com. And because I'm an employee, I get to use this single sign-on functionality. But normally you would have just a normal login to my account. This is the SaaS support, right? And when you go to the My Account section of Saas that is available for all employees, or if you are a partner, the customer would provide you with a username and a password for their account. And you can have multiple accounts under your account, that's fine. And then you can go ahead and actually search all of the accounts that are listed under your names. So for example, because I was in Saas for quite a long time, I just cannot get rid of some of the permissions, and I even get an ownership of the APM system that was part of Saas, right? So when I go to my account, it lists everything that I can access to. Okay, so just an example, I can choose a system, and in case I would have a system that has a license, this is an APM that is expired, I would also get the opportunity to click a button and log into the system to operate the actual APM and Saas. I don't have it, and everybody on their basic account, all the employees of Micro Focus or partners that got their account created by their customer, they would get at least access to support. And that's exactly where we will go right now. Okay, so when you go to support and you need to create a POC, you would click on Get Service. You would select a product. So the most basic product, it's your own My Account, right? Because I don't have any active products right now. And I can request a service, or I can report a problem. Service is when I need them to do stuff. Problem is when I need something to be fixed. So for request a service, I would just go, for example, let's say general or PSAS, new tenant request. Okay, and I'll basically say like new SaaS POC, and I say, hey, I need a new POC. Of course, I'm for Opsb, right? Of course, I'm simplifying it too much, because if I do a request of this sort, a support engineer would contact back and say, well, Alexei, you know what? For Opsbridge POC, I need you to give me some more details. For example, who you are, why do you talk to me, or what would be the name of the POC, stuff like that. Okay, this is I'm simplifying just to show you that the SaaS has their own support system. If we would go for a normal support, let's say we have something broken in-house, then we, of course, will go to Micro Focus support in general, and then you log in and you have your entitlements and some support system. I'm actually not a customer here, so I cannot show you on the inside, but this is where, guys, you are the experts and I'm the student, because I had never had the chance to use the standard support, right? So we have two systems. That's the point. We have two systems. One for SaaS. This is where you request your POC, or at least integrate or interchange details with the SaaS support. And it stands apart from the normal support. Okay, now I got it out of my chest because it was very important topic. We can discuss SaaS theory endlessly, but without understanding that SaaS stands apart, all of this is not very useful. Now, let's go and start discussing it in technical terms. So what is a SaaS service? Basically, you have a customer environment. It can have all kind of products. Here on the diagram, we have OBM, Sidescope, APM, and NMI, DCA, whatever. It all sits in the customer's infrastructure, be it cloud, be it on-prem, whatever they like. And there is SaaS. It sits separately from them, and we want them to be exchanging details or functioning together. Okay, so the SaaS itself, why use SaaS? I mean, you already have an OBM. Why do you need an OBM in the cloud? And the point is, like managed services in AWS that are managed by a professional team, and you just get the benefit of having a product that works, same goes for SaaS. They have their own environment, they maintain it, they fix it for you when it's broken, and do it proactively. So they have internal monitoring and everything. They deploy patches, they do upgrades, and you just get to go into the web page of OBM or RTSM or whatever product you purchase from SaaS, and just do your stuff. Work with your events, your metrics, just work, instead of trying to deal with all the infrastructure. This is why Saas exists in general, and for Opsb, it provides also a couple of benefits for existing customers with specific strategies in mind. Okay, so this is Saas in general. Now, of course, the deployment scenario, we would call it mainly a manager of managers scenario, because we will have a Saas OBM and we have the on-premise OBM that feeds Saas OBM with details and just solves a couple of interesting problems for customers that have large setups or complex networks. It just makes the centralized management a little bit easier, right? So here's the before picture, everything on premise, and in Saas, everything is connected without giving too much detail. Now let's talk about it in detail a little bit. Let's untangle what's going on. So this is the diagram, which is basically the same thing that was here, but a little bit more focused on individual components. So the Saas environment has Micro Focus products installed and ready, and there's the Saas environment. So how do they communicate? What is it that they can do?
It could be, Alexei, it could be on-prem or on cloud, right?
Doesn't matter.
One on the bottom.
The one on the bottom can be anything you like.
Right.
The only difference is that you are the owner and the administrator of it.
Yeah.
Okay, customer environment. We refer to it on-premise because, we still confuse between the what considered to be on-premise versus cloud versus Saas, because they are so convoluted or intertangled. Saas is hosted on AWS, but what do we care? Do we ever see something related to AWS when we work with Saas? Not at all. It's transparent. It's their decision. They can host it on old infrastructure, on the mainframe that they bought on the second market. And as long as you get to access OBM and RTSM and BVD, you don't care what they do. Okay, so yes. So we refer to it as Saas in your environment or customer environment from this point on.
Okay, thank you.
So customer environment has Micro Focus products, Saas has Micro Focus products. What is the relationship between the two? What do we need to establish? Now, let's go directly to a very complex diagram. And what we need to take into account here is just three things: the colors of the interchange. The most ideal scenario for us is when a customer has Micro Focus products, at least on a version of 2105, for connectivity reasons. 2105 supports proxy communication on all components. So this is the main reason why we want it to be on this level at least. But they don't have optic, okay, or at least they don't care about optic, or they want to have optic in all places, but doesn't matter. What matters is that they have an on-prem and it's already set up, and they want the manager of manager scenarios and maybe optic later. And under those conditions, we can have two variations or two styles of integration. A desired one, the one that you see right now, has three types of integration. One of them is topology synchronization from inside the Saas environment. Can I have a pointer? I have a pointer option in this kind of preview. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I hope you can see. So the blue one is RTSM, and basically Saas environment would synchronize the desired CIs into the Saas environment. Why do we need CIs? Because we want to go to Saas environment and we want to recognize our own stuff. And part of it is resolution, right? An event would be attached to a CI, so we must synchronize the CIs. Second integration type would be events. Also metrics, but we were not going to be touching that portion specifically here. Yeah, so you would be sending metrics to Saas, and you want to set it up in a way that allows you to go to Saas, get an event, work on event, close the event, and the event would be closed on premise as well. Why? Because you don't want to have 10,000 events over here and only 5 here because you are working on this environment, right? You want them to be organized on both ends. So it's going to be an event integration. Third integration type, this is where we get to enjoy optic a lot, like seriously a lot, is when we install a monitoring edge component if the customer doesn't want a full-fledged optic with verticals and worker nodes and master nodes and clusters and maintenance and expertise on Kubernetes. All they want is just to go to an optic that somebody else prepared and see their stuff in there, in reports or be it in metrics directly. So they get to do one thing: install a very convenient component. We call it Monitoring Service Edge. You can refer to it as AMC portion of optic that is just the AMC portion without everything else. Okay, if you remember when you were setting up your environment, be it now or in the past, one of the options was, do you want AMC? And you would say normally no or yes, doesn't matter. This is just the AMC separately. And we will be dealing with that in exercises, right? And this component allows us to do a very simple thing. It would go to all of the agents, collect all of their metrics according to your needs, including custom metrics, and send them directly to Saas. Very convenient. Okay, now you might notice that for some reason we have two more metric connectivities here, one from SiteScope and one from BPM. And this is because we can actually send our SiteScope agentless metrics and BPM transaction metrics directly to Saas. There is no limit to that, and it's actually a very, very convenient solution. And this too is going to be part of the exercises a little bit later, right? So to recap, you do three things to have a good POC with Saas. One of them is topology synchronization, another one is event synchronization, and the third one would be metrics, if you really want to. I believe you can have a Saas POC without optic. I guess this is an option for somebody that would like to have manager of managers that is not maintained by the customer themselves. This is option number one. Now, let's discuss option number two, and then I'll stop a little bit for questions. Option number two looks a little bit more complex, but realistically, it is a simpler scenario. Why simpler? In the previous scenario, somebody configured the OBM and SiteScope, and somebody in on-prem or in customer's environment configured the views and CI filtering and everything else. And then when they do Saas, they just get to use all of those results that are already very much tuned to the liking of the customer, and they send the ready results to Saas. So Saas becomes very organized. It gets only the CIs that it wants. It gets only the events that you want to be forwarding. It gets only the metrics that you want to see in Optic. Under this condition, which is not ideal, and there are many reasons why customer would not like to do that, even though it looks compelling. They can just grab the whole stuff that they own and just send it to Saas. Okay, no custom views, no CI filtering, no enrichment, no event filtering, no anything. They just plainly grab everything that they own, send it to Saas and say, you know what, once I get to Saas, because this is a manager of managers scenario, a single place that I need to operate, then in Saas, I would decide which CIs I want, which CIs I don't want, what kind of views I'm going to operate, what kind of events I'm going to suppress, what kind of rules I'm going to have. Okay, and you can see the appeal, because basically instead of maintaining their on-prem environment with professional services and partners and everything else, they would say, you know what, I'm going to install everything out of the box, just create all the forwarding and forget about it. Now my partners and professional services or whoever is working on it would go to Saas and operate it there in a single location. Big win for everybody. This is option number two. Now, it's not really a good option because there might be some mistakes that can happen along the way. For example, you can swamp the Saas RTSM with too many CIs. So you cannot be that irresponsible. If you want your SiteScope to be managed only in Saas, and you can do it using the new agentless UI, for example, you can just connect all your SiteScope to Saas and just don't care about it in-house anymore. You are running the risk of just not having the monitors that you want, not filtering out the data, not missing out the tuning, and not having the topology discovery done by Sitescope the way that you want it. So while it looks really nice, it is still a scenario that we don't want, because the only thing that you will get from it, from convenience perspective, is event suppression and deleting manually some of the CIs that you collected. Everything else would get an additional layer of complexity, because you will get a mishmash of information from multiple sources in the same place, and now you would have to untangle all of it. Very complex. Okay, so it looks much easier because you just forward everything, but once the data is out there in Saas, this is where you don't get the benefit. So I want to stop here and to clear out some questions if you have before we continue, because we will go into how to actually make all of this happen.
Yeah, Alexei, I'm just playing here devil advocate with the customer.
Please do.
So you know, part of course, Saas is that Micro Focus maintains things and versions and stuff. But here we have two OBMs, right? OBM on-prem and OBM on Saas, and we're maintaining the on-prem one. I know we're not doing lots of the, as you said, the analytics on it and remediation, etc. But still, we're maintaining it, and we have to upgrade, and we have to. So I think it's like does it defeat the purpose of Saas to have two OBMs here?
Does it? No, because Saas gives you the manager of managers. That's what you want from them. Normally, a customer that would like Saas in addition to on-prem, they would have a complex environment. Okay, they would have several OBMs. They might be maintaining their own manager of managers scenario in a complex environment with multiple data centers or regions in the world, and they want to offload the manager of managers and deal just with the, get the data locally, filter it out, send it to Saas, and work on it there.
Okay, so that's a good candidate. So simple customers are not a good candidate for Saas, who has one OBM.
No.
I can maybe add some insights there, because I've had Saas exposure from a pre-sales perspective lately. First of all, on the roadmap, we know that the OBM that sits on-prem or in the customer, the tenant environment, is supposed to shrink over time. So the idea is to have it smaller and smaller in terms of footprint. The other thing is, the more on-premise infrastructure that you have that you need to monitor on-premise, the more components you need on-premise. You can have a customer who only has everything in the cloud, in public cloud. They could use cloud observability from Saas and would not even need an on-premise OBM, because everything is monitored straight from Saas and goes into Saas and stays in Saas. So it really depends on the customer situation. If you have a smaller OBM with customer with just an OBM and let's say 500 agents, that might not be the best candidate. Until the point when you talk to them about data lake and visualizations and reporting, because that's where customers shy away from the cost of ownership for building that up on premise and maintaining it themselves. And that's where Saas can produce additional value that they can benefit from.
Yes.
Okay, so these are the usual levers that you can push and the tactics you can take.
Great, thank you.
So until we get to a point of optic DL, there are very limited benefits. But once we get to a point where Saas is the one that maintains your optic DL, so hyperscale observability that monitors your infrastructure, right? Single point reporting and getting your metrics from inside the agents and just sending them directly to Saas. Those things are really possible for a customer, and they say, well, I don't need to maintain any more verticals or Kubernetes clusters. I can just deal with data collectors on simple terms, and then everything else. And you guys, in the past 2 days, you experience optic maintenance and upgrades and everything. It's a lot of responsibility and a lot of work that you would like somebody else to do. So they might say, you know what, I really like this optic idea. I really like getting more data into it, and I really like the idea of not having to be the one to manage it. And then they can see more benefits of it. So a small customer that hosts everything in AWS, do they need an agent on every single node? No, they can use actually the hyperscale observability. If they're using multiple clouds, then definitely they want hyperscale observability for AWS and Azure that would just feed data and discovery and events, and basically it's all of the simplest monitoring in a single place without deploying anything in their infrastructure, right? So there are multiple scenarios, but as I understand from pre-sales play right now, and don't kill the messenger, but I think the ideal customer right now is one that has an on-prem, everything in on-premise, and they would like to have manager of managers and add Optic on top of it, something like that. That's, I guess, is the main target for that. And there is like a lot of things that partners or professional services can do under those conditions, because since customer is offloading most things to Saas, they can also offload the customization, right? They don't really need to have an expertise in-house anymore. And they can be done on Saas instead of on-prem. And I guess in many situations, even I could imagine even the security concerns, like of letting somebody inside your environment just to look at your CIs, might be resolved by just providing something outside. So definitely multiple scenarios. This is all new, and this is all going into that direction for good reasons. Okay. All right. So this is this part. I hear somebody wants to comment.
Yeah, I was on mute, but I don't know how you have known something like that. But anyways, yeah, as you said, like the main objective today is the customer that are already having Opsbridge on premise. That's really correct. And I think in the future, once we get MCC fully functioning, we can use multiple site scopes in different locations of the customer that can forward data to Opsbridge SaaS. So you can sell to new customers agentless technologies that can be controlled from SaaS with MCC. So yeah, it's today still we are looking for the on-premise, the customer that has on-premise Opsbridge deployment. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So I wasn't wrong. Yeah, it's not a new. Actually, the target group was defined like 8 months ago, and when I asked if they changed anything, they said no. So
they changed only the minimum number of let's say units that is needed. Okay, but they didn't yet change the whole idea. Even the new offerings that we create is for a customer that has on-premise stuff. The only one that is purely cloud, which is the Opsbridge Cloud Observability, that will connect to any cloud to monitor.
Hello?
What about multi-product customers? DCA, NOM, Bridge. Can they use the same shared Optic backend and get the same value, or is it 3 separate?
Yes, they can, but for sure they need to align with the SaaS team to do that, but they can. And actually, it's saving much money for us. Okay.
Just to rectify this a little bit, remember that Mahmoud said we focus on existing Opsbridge customers. It doesn't mean you can't go to a greenfield customer and try sell Opsbridge SaaS. We're actually doing that in the account right now. It is possible. Yeah. You just have to be clear about the balance between SaaS and on-prem deployments to make them aware that there will be on-premise things. If they have a data center, they need agents. Agents sit on-prem. They need the data for the OBM. But you can position Opsbridge SaaS to your customers. It's not forbidden.
Exactly.
But there is a focus. There is a clear focus because it's a long way to go for a greenfield customer, and the path should be smoother for an existing Opsb customer. That's the point.
Yeah, you are correct. Yes.
All right. Fantastic. So now let's get to how what do you do once the customer really wants to try it? Okay, and our starting position, of course, a customer with on-premise OBM and no optic data or no optic at all. That's exactly how your environments are built. You have the OBM and you don't have optic in it. I know that you installed verticals in it because we wanted the experience, but realistically, your environments don't have optic in it, which is besides the point because we're not going to use that one. Okay, so when we build a Saas POC, one of the main premises is that the customer should not be altering their own security for the sake of connecting to Saas. So the only thing that they need is outbound communication on 443, 383, port 9090 if they choose to use RCP, and the metrics monitoring service edge port 30010. I think it's actually going to be 30001 in our case, because we will be just using the normal receiver. So basically, they would be connecting to HTTPS, agent communication back and forth, and metric data sent to Saas. So that's what they're going to be doing when they go outside. And to make it happen, they need to provide several things to Saas in order to integrate. So one of them would be the BBC certificate from your OBM. Realistically, just send them the whole certificate chain if you want. They need to know your URLs for gateways, or let's say in complex environments, your load balancers, and they want to have the core ID for all of the gateways if you have multiple. And some of the things are pretty simple, like time zone. That's convenience. You can actually get all created on defaults, and once they give you access, you can change the time zone of your users. That's fine. If your site scope goes directly to Saas, of course, some integration username that you prefer. If you don't specify, they would just create one for you. They would call it, for example, if your name of the customer is like Mars, then they would say Mars site scope and user and the admin, right? Something like that. So if you specify and tell them what are the preferred credentials, then they just create it for you, right? Same goes for RTSM. And the last thing is a big decision about who is going to be the main ID generator, global ID generator. Why is this such a big decision? Because you might have ideas about what constitutes a global ID in your environment. Let's discuss a couple of scenarios. One of them is customer that has multiple OBMs in multiple areas, and they already have a centralized UCMDB server that actually serves as a global ID generator for everything, right? If you want Saas to be the global ID generator, you would have to disconnect from this UCMDB in terms of not being the UCMDB stopping to be the global ID generator. If this UCMDB is also serving your internal APM and it serves some other components, I'm not sure how SMAX interacts with it, but probably yeah, all kinds of CMS or NOM components interact with it on all kinds of ways. You might want to say, you know what, my own UCMDB was global ID generator. It is working fine. Saas would get my global IDs into it. So what the folks in Saas, they would just go ahead and mark that the Saas tenant is not global ID generator. You might do the opposite. You might say, you know what, I have a manager of managers, and now I will have a new one in Saas. So let Saas to be the central piece. Let it be the global ID manager. I want it to be like that. And it's entirely possible. So it is a decision. In our exercise, we would let Saas to be global ID manager for the reason of we are going to connect 20 environments to it. So if there are 20 global ID managers connecting to one single piece, they're going to be fighting for attention. We don't really want that. Okay, so more complex scenarios is like, do you have some kind of a ticketing system integrated? Do you want it to be integrated directly to Saas, or do you want to maintain it in-house? If there are infrastructure settings that you need to change at some point, well, they need to match the ones in Saas, at least some of them, right? Because some of the infrastructure changes are dealing with how the data is interpreted. So you don't want to have two different opinions. It goes also for management packs. While essentially you're not going to use the Saas environment to deploy policies on agents or actually to deploy anything. When you synchronize the management packs and customizations, the KPIs and all of your SLA related things, they need to match. So with the OBM in Saas would be able to show you the data that you want to see, the one that you already built in-house. So to do so, you'll just create a content pack, send it to Saas folks. They would deploy it in the infrastructure, in the content pack area that you don't have access to. We'll discuss about this a little bit in a little bit. But once they deploy it, the interpretation of results of metrics and events and CI statuses would match the on-prem and the one in Saas. Okay. Same goes for RTSM packages. If you have some specific queries, some enrichment rules or stuff like that, you can create a package that Saas would import on your behalf. And then your basically CMDB management would match with the one in Saas, and it would not create contradicting messages. Okay. Then, of course, things like customized OBM BVD login page, and this is an interesting one. So, in most terms, what distinguishes the Saas environment from on-premise environment, if they're built using the same technology, right? So you guys created a cloud-based environment. What would distinguish Saas from your environment? In practical terms, only one thing: the name in the URL. That's it. So it's not like APM in Saas, which was customized to be APM in Saas. It's not the same one that you have on-prem. It has different capabilities. The Opsb in Saas right now doesn't support multi-tenancy. So every customer would get actually two instances. One of them is the production, which is like a full setup like the one that you did this week. And another one is staging. So basically same thing, but smaller. Okay, completely dedicated setups, two of them per customer. And the only way for us to know that they are in Saas is because the URL says so. So if you upload a logo or something with a customer, it's very nice because this is not a shared environment, so the logo would fit their needs, right? And of course, the user onboarding, like you want to synchronize the admins and the users, the operators, and everything else, so you can just give them a list of them, and they will create it for you. To recap, we discussed a lot of things, but from the essential things, it's just the core ID of your environment, URLs for gateways or load balancers, and a BBC certificate that Saas needs to import on their end, so they would be trusting your system. Everything else is pretty much cosmetical. Okay, so we have completed the integration. Right. So what do you get when you connect to Saas? What are the things? You can get several UIs. One of them was, of course, is OBM, but with a reduced admin functionality. You can connect with UCMDB local client to Saas. There is no new CMS UI available on the containerized Opsb suite as of this moment, unless you do some additional steps. But you can connect with the CMDB client to Saas to operate your CIs. It's going to be a reduced functionality, right? So no package exchange, no global rules that will alter the system in any dangerous way. But you want to create views, create your views. You want to work with the CIs that you have, work with the CIs. I mean, delete, alter them, do whatever you please. You, as the customer, have the right to do so. You have the AXT Explain dashboard. I guess this is a little bit an outdated slide because now you get the /UI thing, which allows you to see much more than just the AXT Explain. And you have the BVD UI without any administrative permissions. Okay, so you cannot upload dashboards. So if you want custom dashboards in Saas, you need to go through a process of designing them, sending them to Saas. Saas would be doing the uploading and configuration for you. A little bit about that later. I guess if you are at a stage where you need custom BV dashboards, you are very much done with POC part, and now you want to be doing the real job. There are some APIs, of course, very basic ones, and some CLIs that are also limited. Most of them would be dealing with non-invasive stuff, right? Events or CIs or downtimes, but disaster-free. Let's put it this way. Right, and it goes the same way, by the way, too. So Saas would not have the rights to do anything invasive on your end as well, because security matters. Okay, so when you go to administrator on the Saas system, that's practically what you will see. It might change here and there a little bit, but as you see, we do not get the connected servers. We don't get a way to approve certificate requests from agents. We are not managing users. TBAC is missing, for example, at least for the moment. There is no TBAC. So a little bit of a reduced functionality, but enough to operate. And many of the things that are not available to you, they're available to Saas upon request. Then no admin permissions on the BVD. That's the same thing. So what Saas will give you when they are done with the integration? They would give you the Saas URL and the BVD URL. As you see, this portion here, .saas.microfocus.com, that's the only indication that it is Saas, but basically it's an AWS setup that is managed by Saas. And the service health, actually, I can show you that. This is a generic service health that we can open in my browser over here. So in Saas, from experience, I can tell you, many times customers are concerned that the Saas services are not up, and there is like a 99.9 SLA or something that Saas needs to maintain, and many customers disagree with what it constitutes. So let's say there is a data center problem in Saas that is not the Saas faults. Like, is it part of the SLA breach or not, and stuff like that. So this is one of the dashboards they create for you to see if something is wrong with Saas at the moment. In case you think, well, I cannot access BVD, so BVD is down, Saas is not delivering on SLA, you go here into this dashboard and it says, well, BVD is up, BVD is fine. So you can say, oh, maybe this is something to do with my internet provider or something, I don't know, right? So just one of the things that they provide for you. Okay, let's go back to our nice presentation over here. Okay, and they will give you the credentials for Sitescope, RTSM, OBM, and BVD. Okay, so this says November 2021, and I didn't change it because that doesn't really matter. Still, many of those things are not in the scope, right? So CMS UI is that just doesn't exist on the latest version of Opsb deployment. TBAC actions, you cannot perform actions or tools from OBM and Saas. IDM is limited to what IDM can do, right? So those are the limitations. And as we progress, they of course will change, and we need to attend the community calls managed by Mahmoud and Jeff and Steve, and see what the PMs are going to present there, because those things might change and they might be game changers. For now, that's fine. Okay, this is what they cannot do even if they request. Well, some of them are based upon requests, right? So tools, runbooks, they cannot run automation. Those are invasive stuff. They cannot do it. Okay, external instructions, monitoring automation, nodes, certificate requests, connected servers, TBAC, all those things are not possible. Things like change infrastructure settings, for example, to match one to another, or custom event forwarding to another third-party manager, or I don't know, or some kind of a aggregation mechanism, right? Saas would configure it for you. And the user management is based upon request. Okay, but you will notice that the main theme is irreversible damage. Okay, as long as the task can cause an irreversible damage, Saas would not allow you to do it yourself. They would like to be the ones to do it for you in case it's possible, or not to give you the option at all. For example, like tools and runbooks, because somebody takes over your Saas environment by mistake and wreaks havoc on your internal systems. You don't want that, even for yourself, not for hackers and not for disgruntled employees, right? Central system is central system after all. It has its dangers. Okay. Now you will open tickets to Saas. Why we started with Saas support in this slide work in general? It was just the first thing. Let's talk about Saas, and support is the main topic. It's because you're going to be working a lot with support. Saas means it's managed for you. It means that you are the user and not the admin anymore. And admin tasks need to be done upon request. So you want connected servers? Saas will do it for you. You want to modify infrastructure settings? Open a key ticket. User management, open ticket. Management packs, synchronizing packages, some customer TSM work based on something that you prepared, or goes outside of scope of allowed permissions. All of those things you need to be aware about the Saas ticketing system at all times. You or the customer or anybody that is working on a Saas. There is no way to avoid it, right? For the on-prem support or normal support, you would contact them to fix stuff, right? You would not contact them to create a user for me in my OBM, please. In Saas, you would do exactly that. Some automations, they can still be processed and executed by your local systems, not from Saas, but if your OBM processes events and triggers runbooks locally, and only the events are sent to Saas, you can still use your on-prem environment to perform those tasks, to configure them, to maintain them, to execute them, okay? Now, enrichment based on scripts, meaning that it's like whatever comes in is altered irreversibly. You would do it on your on-prem, and some tools, custom tools, that would be all based on the on-prem environment, not propagated to Saas. Okay, so this was like the technical terms. So far we discussed what is Saas in general, how the infrastructure looks like when you have a POC or a Saas integration in general, how to make it happen, and what do you get. But we are still must be a little bit more aware about what is going on in Saas itself. So to give you a comparison, normal support, professional support of any company, you can assume that when you open a ticket, there is like a multi-tier system of knowledge there, right? Somebody that does simple tasks and somebody that does complex tasks, and then it goes all the way to R&D. You don't care, okay? But you can assume that there is like multi-tier system. In Saas, it's not just multi-tier system, it works in parallel, and because you are going to interface with them based on so many tasks, it's better to understand what is it they can do for you, because believe me, as a support engineer in the past, from experience, I can tell you this. When somebody opens a request and they actually ask what they want and provide you details of what they want on the very first attempt, this is very beneficial for us and for the customer. Okay, so instead of telling, please filter my transactions, in custom reports, you would say, well, those transactions that I'm seeing need to be filtered out. This is the commonality between them. Please do the task. They would not come out to say, well, can you please clarify or add information? But this kind of interaction is based only on when you understand that it's not the same person that fixes your stuff, implements the stuff, develops the stuff, or deletes them, right? There are all different teams. So this is exactly what we're going to discuss over here. Okay, so there is a production monitoring that goes behind the scenes. Saas has its own SOC. Like customers, Saas has its own SOC because it provides services to so many people. And there's a dedicated team that configures monitoring of everything that Saas owns, including the Opsb environment. Okay, and they would do a bunch of automations to do it. They would use Operations Bridge for some parts of them. They even use BVD to see the reports of their own infrastructure. Okay, so this thing happens on the backend. So when your environment doesn't perform well, it means that it's something common, like it is inaccessible, or it redirects you to weird places. It's very slow. There is a team that sits behind the curtains there that monitors it and reacts to it. You don't always have to complain in the first 5 minutes when something is down. You can say, well, you know what? Probably the SOC team on the other end would restart the node. They would check the network. They would contact their own team on the back end. So instead of telling them, guys, your OBM is down, you can say, guys, at what stage of resolution are you right now? And they might say, you know what, the infrastructure team just click the button. In 2 minutes, everything will be up, right? So you don't need to be feeling left all alone in case there's something happens on the SaaS infrastructure. Okay, there's of course the health portal that they give they give to you, and there's also a bunch of notifications the customer would get. Some of them are automated, some of them are triggered manually by the backend support team, but there is a backend support team that is responsible for monitoring, contacting experts, all the way to third-party vendors, actually, to get it fixed. Okay, it happens, it exists. All right. Now, there is a monitoring service edge. Actually, we did not reach the full key personas. Let's skip the key personas and then we'll go back to monitoring service edge. Okay, so what are the people in SaaS who you are getting to when you open a ticket? When you open a ticket, first of all, it gets to one second. You get to Service Operations Center. Okay, they also have a 24-hour support for phone, and I think they had chat in the past. Maybe they might not have it anymore. Their preferred method of communication is to use the ticketing system. Now, as being, I actually work in SOC for SaaS for about a decade, and from experience, I can tell you, if you call them, you're not going to get a faster response. They are working as fast as they can. They get a ticket and they act on it. You call them, they need to talk to you instead of acting on the ticket, okay? All they need is the initial information to act upon. They see the urgency stated in the ticket that you open, and they will act upon it all the way to the resolution. You can get updates through the ticketing system, but if you call them, the support engineer would stop everything that they're doing, and they can do multiple tasks at the same time, and they will be dealing with customer satisfaction, okay, being very nice to the one that calls them, but that's about it. You're not going to get extra. If you would start giving them technical details over the phone, they will say, well, it's all nice, but that's a lot of details, and I'm afraid that I will not get everything. So please open a support case and write everything down that you want me to know, right? So ticketing system is faster. Then the support team would actually will contact the teams that are responsible for multiple tasks, right? So if you request a change that is small, like a username change, password reset, the service operation team, service operations center team would do it for you. If they need to involve somebody else, they would reassign the ticket to a professional team. Now, the professional teams, the SaaS operations, or even the infrastructure, their SLA, their execution speed is slower. Okay, so in case it's something simple, if you provide all of the details, they would not go back to you and ask you questions, and then you need to go back and wait for them to look at your stuff. If you know that this is an infrastructure change, tell them, I need your infrastructure team to allow this number of IPs that I own. Please include them in the firewall rules. It happens for some products, right? Then it will go to the infrastructure team, and the infrastructure team says, well, I update my security rules twice a week on a specific date, and it will happen on the closest one, like Wednesday or something. Okay, if this is a team that's supposed to take the package and upload it to OBM, that's going to be the SaaS operations team. They too have an SLA, and they are also the people that do the upgrades of the systems, and they do have a line or a queue to cater to. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary, for example, for them to handle for 24 hours for a simple package upload task, right? Or even more. If this is an investigation, it can go even further. Okay, but you will need to understand, you get to talk only to those people. If any of the other teams would answer, you wouldn't know, but there are exceptions.
Alexei, may
yes.
I have a question around the monitoring
Sure.
of the SaaS environment? This monitoring is strictly done for the SaaS environment only. So of the on-premise environment, there is nothing monitored by our SaaS team, directly or indirectly.
Exactly. Yes. So if you have a case, for example, you say, "Whoa, I don't get my events in SaaS," and SaaS team would say, "You know what? All my components are fine, and I get events from other customers using the same firewall that I use for you. So probably you need to check your OBM. Is it able to send something out there?" Right. So their monitoring is very important, because when you have two components, one that belongs to you and one that belongs to SaaS, and something doesn't work between them, the customer might say that it's the SaaS fault.
Okay, well, we transform the whole license stack of the Opsbridge into SaaS licenses. Will the customer be able to open normal standard support tickets for on-premise situations where they think it's a defect or?
Yes, they still get entitlements, and SaaS, if they didn't change it. I'm talking about my past experience. They might have changed it. But in SaaS, you needed to have an entitlement from normal support, from normal accounting, to get something in SaaS, not the other way around. They might have changed that, but if you have an on-prem account, on-prem components that you are paying for them, there should be a normal support that also fixes those things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, once again, our SaaS team manages the on-premise Opsbridge OBM.
No, they don't. They don't touch on-premise at all. They just touch their own environments, and they never go out.
But they maintain it, right?
No.
They upgrade.
I can give you a scenario.
They upgrade it. They upgrade it. They even upgrade agents. Or?
Their own stuff, not the on-prem.
That's my.
Yes, they do. They do update versions.
Yes.
Version currency for the on-premise components of Opsbridge is part of the service description. That is part of SaaS responsibility.
They even upgrade the agent on monitored servers. Right. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't have the admin password anymore for the on-prem side.
Really well. In that case, then I missed it entirely. I'm sorry that
that's okay. Let's not confuse maintenance of the software and management of how it's being used. So if a customer has trouble with their policies to work or events to be delivered, then that's functionality. And as we've learned, the SaaS team would not take care of that because it's not part of the SaaS hosting or the maintained software on premise. It is functionality. So, and I think Heinz's question was whether the SaaS customer, Opsbridge SaaS customer, owning no on-premise Opsbridge licenses anymore, but only SaaS subscriptions, can still go to the regular Micro Focus Opsbridge support to raise questions about event and policy and whatnot functionalities. And I think the answer is yes. And I think Alexei had made that clear in the earlier slides, that you still have 2 points of contact, one for SaaS issues, one for product issues. So if the product functionally doesn't function as expected, you contact the support team, and either it turns out to be a defect or you did something wrong, or they point you to the product documentation, just as you would with on-premise usage. But there is a separate point of contact for anything that's related to SaaS. So if something's wrong with, I don't know, your connectivity to the SaaS OBM, for example, then that's what they would probably take care of.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question because I don't want to make the same mistake again. You said that Saas will be responsible for upgrading the versions of on-prem components. So
That's
are we
what
talking
Hierarchy is
about
putting
like
in the
Saas
service
going to
descriptions,
your customer environment and upgrading the OBM from 21.05 to 21.11?
You have to have a minimum supported version of those on-premise components. But as
But
of
would
that point,
Saas be the ones to do the job?
Yes. Well, that's part of the SaaS contract then.
yeah, you have to be on a minimum version. As of that version, Micro Focus SaaS takes care of the update. Of the software itself, you still provide the platform for it, be it on-premise or cloud, is your job as a customer. And whatever you do with those components is your job too.
The operating, the using of the product itself, that is still in the obligation of the customer. Yeah.
Yeah, with the help of PS or whoever.
Yeah.
But the maintaining for example, the monitoring service edge and the data forwarder OBM and the side scopes, you had this architecture diagram with a couple of boxes in customer environment and SaaS environment. And some of the boxes in the customer environment had a little Micro Focus logo at the top left edge corner rather. That's exactly the components that will be updated from a Micro Focus software perspective through the Micro Focus SaaS team. Nope, further before. Back. Further back even. Yep, here we go.
Yes.
You see on the right where you circled a couple of components in
Micro
blue.
Focus logo. Yeah.
Yeah. These are the components that Micro Focus SaaS updates for the customer. Okay. Only the Micro Focus software component itself. They don't care about patching the Linux or Windows servers or the databases. But
okay, so I'm not convinced, but I'm also not aware because I just tried to imagine myself a customer has 5,000 agents that are not up to date.
That is
in
an
like
excellent
5
question,
different
how that is
platforms
going to work in practice. Yeah,
across
I
3
keep asking
different
that myself.
data centers. So
Yeah.
how SaaS is going to maintain that?
That is a good question, but it is what Cosmo Ross and Harald Brose have been presenting for the last half year. So
I'll have to think on that because I think there are nuances there that I would really want to dig into. But for now, let's say this SaaS will be responsible for something on-premise, but we need clarification from Harald on that because it gets complex really fast, especially with customers that have some history. Okay, so going back here, I just want to cover this topic before we go to the edge component. There are some key personas that you would be actually exposed to directly. So professional services work, of course, for you, so they don't care about the SaaS ticketing system. The Service Operations Center basically sits in the front of all of those blacked out entities, so product teams, configuration teams, or SMEs, and the infrastructure. And 1 second, there's PCP team support tickets. Yeah, that one should be blacked out as well. And there's the SaaS customer manager. This is a unique entity for SaaS. So basically, that's a guy that represents SaaS to the customer and customer to the SaaS. They meet regularly. And this is, all right, CP team is different. We'll talk about it in a second. This customer success manager guy will just get all of the feedback they can and try to implement. They would be also present in most of the escalations that SaaS needs or all of the weird communication where, for example, the customer says that SaaS is at fault and SaaS will say, well, it's your data center that it's at fault. Any of those things would involve the customer success manager as well. Now, there is the CP team. No, I confused it with somebody else. There is another team, escalation team in SaaS. SaaS has a dedicated escalation team that deals with urgencies like, service is down and I'm not getting any help. So there's like a whole entity dedicated to just this kind of interaction. Okay, so on-premise and support, we already discussed this. They use different systems, and unfortunately, in most cases, there is a learning path where you go for the most efficient and primary result, right? and everybody can call in, but it wouldn't help. And this diagram is basically more or less the same diagram that I showed earlier, where if you open the ticket to the wrong entity, they would still open the ticket for you. This diagram shows only one direction, but there is an agreement to do in other direction, right? So on-premise support would contact Saas on your behalf, and Saas will contact on-premise support on your behalf, at least in the point of handling of the issue. Then the back contact and everything would be done from the correct team, but they, at least initially, they're supposed to open a ticket to another team. And of course, in many cases, we don't really know who is responsible. You know, is it a product issue? Is it a customization issue? And it might belong to two teams simultaneously. And we must insist with everybody that they would keep their ticketing open until we get a resolution from one of the sides. That's just a normal part of customer lifecycle in SaaS, but we're talking about really complex issues. Those are not common at all.
But
okay,
Alexei,
yes.
The main point is the person who is going to open a ticket has to make a decision if he wants to open the ticket with the SaaS side, yes, or with the standard support side.
Correct.
And there is a 50-50 chance that he might choose the wrong
no, because
side.
You will be evaluating what's in front of you anyways, right? So you wouldn't go to your on-prem OBM that says the name of your company in the host name, and you see 503 and you go to SaaS to fix it, right? The chance
but still the chance will be there that they open a ticket with the standard support, yes, while it is a SaaS problem, or they open a SaaS, yes, ticket while it is a standard support ticket, and well, this will at least lead to a delay.
Yes, of course, that is for sure. There is a chance that they, by mistake, go to a different place, or more realistically, from experience, is that they would not estimate properly what's in front of them, because not everything is availability. You know, many things are just about something that you see inside the product when you click several buttons, and then it is really hard to decide between one and another. Okay, oh, there's Mahmoud serving us some slides, probably from Harvard, right? Update of which components. Isbra install of which components not included.
Yeah, so it's an installation updating on the first onboarding. Yes, updating the components to the latest, to the minimum supported version, which shall be the latest, is part of the agreement on the onboarding level. But any updates should be like additional services.
Okay, well, I'll include it for my next week presentation then. Fantastic, thank you. This was missing for me. Great. Let's do a little bit of monitoring service edge. There is not much to talk about it. Basically, monitoring service edge is a containerized entity that is basically a agent metric collector separated from the rest of the Opsb suite installation, right? So normally we would go and we choose like BVD, Optic, OBM, AMC. This is just the AMC part. We call it monitoring service edge because it's pre-tuned to be deployed fast and conveniently in the SaaS environment. So it's a little bit, not a little bit, it's much easier and more convenient to deploy than the Opsb suite that we do ourselves, right? And in terms of, it's a simple install, and it goes practically like this. You get your monitoring service edge that goes to OBM and RTSM to get a list of everything that it needs to connect to get metrics, right? So basically it gets a certificate exchange between your OBM RTSM. Then it pulls the agent list from RTSM. And from this point on, it will do it, of course, with a specific frequency to get updated on new agents and entities. But then it will go to the agents directly, pull the metrics from agents directly, and send them to Saas. That's what the monitoring service edge is doing, and that's exactly what we're going to be in the exercise. Now we are going to go with K3S, with a simple bring your own Kubernetes scenario. We're not going to be using Saas EKS, although we could, AWS EKS. We could use EKS. We don't want to. This one is going to be based on K3S installation, lightweight Kubernetes. And it's going to be just one server inside your own VPC. And there's going to be some post-install tasks involved in it. In terms of sizing, it might change from version to version, but a starter pack requires overall 6 CPUs and 8 GB of RAM. In AWS, you cannot get 6 CPUs, so the next best thing is 8 CPUs. And the cheapest version of it is to have one with 32 gigs of RAM. There are machines that would have 8 CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM, but they're tuned for something else and they cost lots of money. So we're going to be using the cheapest version, and even the processors that we use are based on AMD, just to save a couple of cents every hour. Okay, so the starter pack can handle quite a lot of things. And actually, our setup would accommodate even a bigger variation of it, just because the machine selection is so limited.
Alexei, this edge monitoring service is not related to events, right?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's only to metrics, and it is also related to custom metrics. So that is it about the Saas theory. Let's talk about the Saas exercises. So a little bit of a disclaimer. We have prepared a really great Saas impersonation machine. And 2 days ago, it exploded, the whole cluster, just beyond repair. So we created a new one using the latest bits. And right now, in terms of functionality, this Saas environment can accommodate your topology synchronization and event synchronization. The metrics to Optic are not received. We are still working to fix this issue. So far we had like 7 engineers from various R&D teams working on that environment, and I'll continue working with them as much as I can while we perform the Saas exercises. Luckily for us, the first few exercises are not involving Optic. So fingers crossed, until then we would get the Optic rolling. The only change that between Optic metrics working and not working is in the results. So all of the procedures were tested, they are correct in terms of the exercises. The only difference is that the BVD dashboards would not show the metrics, and OBM performance dashboard would not show the metrics. So we will do the exercises for Saas integration, and we will do the one with the edge component because there is much educational value in how this works. But seeing the Optic metric results, we will postpone it until this feature is fixed. Okay, fingers crossed that the R&D would be able to fix it. All of the components seems to be normal. On the backend, it's just data doesn't get into Vertica, right? So when you send data, it's not rejected. When you do everything else, it's not rejected. It's just the end result. When you go to BVD dashboards, they are empty. When you go to Vertica, it is empty. So to recap, we will be continuing the Saas exercises as they are, but we will wait with seeing the result until R&D is able to fix our issue.
Same for the BPM in Optic.
Any Optic. All of the Optic doesn't show results because simply the data doesn't go to Vertica. While from the perspective of the product, it thinks that it does send the data. It thinks that everything is fantastic. Okay, so it means that all of the integrations will work. And also about the exercise itself, let me, usually I'm not doing recaps of any exercises except for this one. right? So we will go with starting the POC process. Since the Saas POC itself involves a very limited number of steps or technical steps from you on the Saas end, we are going to impersonate it. So I will be impersonating Saas support by email, not by ticketing system. And you will follow a process that is as close to the Saas process as possible, right? You will extract certificates. You would send me an email with all of the details. You will get the correct, the currently relevant details into your email back from me once I'm done with my end of the configuration. This thing is not going to be visible to you. Same as with Saas, because you would never know what they did and how long it take. All you know is the end result. Okay, this is our Saas exercises, and this is going to be interactive on that level. Cool, that is it, and I'm stopping the recording now.